Hey everyone, Naveed Jamali. Welcome to Unconventional Insights, the show where we talk to social media personalities about all things military. Really excited for our next guest. She's an Army veteran, also in a career field that's true to my heart, public affairs. You know her on IG and TikTok. We're excited to welcome Captain Angelena Garland. Angelena, thanks so much for joining us. Thrilled to have you. Thrilled to, we spend a lot of time with public affairs officers. You have a really interesting story about that, and your whole background, in fact, is fascinating. Yeah. But it's really cool to have a public affairs professional to talk, and I'm sure we can spill the tea. So first thing, welcome. Thrilled to have you. Let's start right there. So you're a public affairs officer. Can you tell us exactly where you are and what you're doing in your role right now?
So I am currently stationed at Fort Meade in Maryland, and I am the company commander for the only advanced individual training for the public affairs career field. So we house roughly 200 soldiers who will go through the Defense Information Schoolhouse for their training to become public affairs soldiers. And it's such an amazing opportunity. There's only one position like this in our career field, and I feel super blessed to just have the opportunity to lead these soldiers.
Listen, anytime you're in a position where you're training like the future generation of anything, that's a pretty important and awesome role. Yeah. I look forward to. I'm sure there's some soldiers you're going to train that are going to end up doing. Denying my FOIA request. No, I'm kidding. Right. For those that don't know, DINFOS is a really cool school. It's really important. It's one of the few sort of career training schools that's joint, right? So everyone who's a public affairs professional, whether officer or enlisted, whatever branch they might go, comes to DINFOS. So, you have a really important job. Can you explain for those who may not be up to snuff on Army language, what AIT means, like what that means in terms of where they are in their career path?
Yeah, so AIT comes right after basic training. So everyone knows, right? When you join the Army, you go to basic training first, right? You're basically training how to be a soldier. And then after that, roughly 3 months, you'll go off to what's called your AIT, which is basically job training for soldiers. So every job in the military, every MOS has an AIT or a schoolhouse associated. And soldiers will go to that. And once they're finished with that, they will go off into the operational Army and do their job.
And we were also chatting about this before, right? So one of the things that's really kind of unique about the Army. So I think the Army has, when it comes to public affairs, just on the aviation field, we were, the Air Force and the Navy, they tend to be a little more, how can I put this delicately, a little more rigid, whereas the Army is like they're like, hey, you want to put a camera in a helicopter? Like, yeah, go for it. They're totally cool. Whereas, when it comes to the Army on the officer side, I think it's really interesting. Can you talk a little bit about how the career progression from Army officers in the PA field versus the other branches is a little different?
It's different in the sense that the Army is the only branch that does not allow our officers, our initial entry officers, to go in straight as a public affairs officer. We have to spend a little time as an officer, right? Right now, they're allowing junior captains to go in and apply to voluntarily transfer into our career field, but they're looking into letting lieutenants come in. And I'm super excited about that. I think it's an opportunity for the Army to see, this next generation of leaders and, how creative they are. They're super innovative and they will bring something to the career field that we haven't had before. So I'm really excited for that. And I think that, looking at our sister services and how they've allowed it this entire time, it'll be really cool to see, the Army kind of transition into that.
It's a lot of change. I mean, and in a good way. I mean, I think, the whole career field, I mean, the fact that, you and I are talking like this, my goodness, I can't even imagine 10 years ago, this probably 3 years ago, this didn't even exist, right?
Right.
So it's just changed a lot. And your story itself, your personal story of how you got to where you are in your Army career field is also remarkable, right? So you start off as enlisted. Can you talk a bit about where you started and how you got to where you are today?
Oh my gosh. Yes, it's such an unorthodox
Yeah.
career.
We like unorthodox.
So I enlisted back in October of 2009. And that's when I shipped for basic training. I swore into the Army in December of 2008 when I was a senior in high school. And at that time, I was in junior ROTC. And, JROTC, you have to wear the uniform. And it was one of those days where we were wearing our uniform, and this was Air Force Junior OTC. And I remember going into the cafeteria, and there were Army recruiters in there. And mind you, I had no intention of joining the military during that time. Like, I was all for I'm going to run track in college. I'm going to go to a big university and get a degree and whatever. There was no plan for the military, but for some reason, walking into that cafeteria that day, I just thought to go up to the recruiters, and I was like, "Hey, you're in uniform. I'm in uniform. What's up?" And they're like, "Hey, take this little card and fill it out." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And that night, I took what's called the pre-ASVAB, and the ASVAB is basically an aptitude test, right? You're testing your mathematical skills, paragraph reasoning, word knowledge, and that helps the Army or the military decide, what branch you qualify for and what jobs you qualify for, right? So that night I took the pre-ASVAB, tested really well. So the next day they're like, "You're going to take the ASVAB." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And I tested really well that day. And then that weekend I was up at MEPS and I was swearing into the Army. And I'm like, whoa. How did this happen, right? So the following year, I shipped off to basic training, and I enlisted as an informational technology specialist, which is a 25 Bravo in the United States Army. And I did basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And then following that, I went to Fort Gordon, now Fort Eisenhower, Georgia, to AIT to train for my job as an informational technology specialist. And then I shipped off to Korea. And I remember the day I found out that I was getting stationed in Korea. I cried so hard. Just because I grew up in a small city called Lynchburg in Virginia. And my family didn't grow up traveling or anything like that. So, flying a plane terrified me. And to think that I'm going to be on a plane for 14 hours, I was like, woo, this is too much. But it was what I needed. So I went over to Korea and had a great time, was able to travel to a couple different countries. I coached the track team on base there, made some friends there. And then after that, I was stationed in El Paso, Texas at Fort Bliss. And it was during that time when I decided that I wanted to become an Army officer, or commission as an Army officer. So I decided to go through what's called the Green to Go program, which gives active duty enlisted members the opportunity to go to college, complete ROTC, and finish off their bachelor's degrees, just because that's a requirement as a commissioned officer. And so I chose Norfolk State University, those Spartans. And I chose to obtain a degree in mass communications and journalism. And that was also one of the reasons why I wanted to become a public affairs officer, because I found out about that after I enlisted, right? About this whole career field, which excited me. I'm like, what? Like, the Army has this? So I pursued that degree because it was one of my passions, and commissioned as an Army officer in December of 2017, graduated summa cum laude from Norfolk State University that same weekend. And I commissioned as an adjutant general officer because, again, I can't commission straight into public affairs. And so I did a lot of human resource, personnel management work for the first couple years of my time as an Army officer. And then in 2020, I got orders to Washington, D.C., where I didn't work specifically in my career field as an AG officer at that time. I was actually granted the opportunity to work in ceremonies in the National Capital Region, where we were in charge of all of the executive level ceremonies that were happening in this area. And so our top 5 customers were the president, First Lady, Vice President, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of the Army, and then there's the chairman. And then, when foreign delegations come over, foreign Minister of Defenses, presidents, all of the above, we coordinated with the old guard and joint ceremony teams to conduct these missions. And so it allowed me the opportunity to participate in the 2021 presidential inauguration, where I got to escort the First Lady and the Second Gentleman. And I was also participating in the National Memorial Day observance and National Veterans Day observance that happens at the tomb. Yes, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier at Arlington National Cemetery, and meeting people from all over the world, escorting First Ladies from all over the world. I was a Medal of Honor escort for a posthumous recipient, Staff Sergeant Kaneshiro from Hawaii. And so I flew out to Hawaii and received his children. And I say children because it's weird because they were older than me, but I got to bring them over. And they received the Medal of Honor on their behalf, or their dad's behalf, which I thought was really cool. It was just endless possibilities and so many opportunities to, really network and get out there. And then it was during that time when I decided, okay, I'm ready to become a public affairs officer. Let me go ahead and apply. And that's when I was selected. And I had to go to what's called Captain's Career Course first down at Fort Jackson. And I completed that, and now I'm here. Yeah, there's that.
Just a small town girl from Lynchburg, Virginia, right? Like, yes. It's like, I mean, isn't it funny? I mean, and I mean this with complete utter respect, but like, when you talk to people in the military, it's not uncommon for this. They start off in this small town, and I mean, you're in DC, you're working with the old guard. For people who don't know what the old guard is, can you tell them very quickly what the old guard is?
They are the premier infantry unit of the United States Army, the oldest infantry unit of the United States Army, and they are responsible for all ceremonial and mortuary affair missions in the National Capital Region. So the guys you see on TV that's in these like super well put together uniforms at these ceremonies, and they are all, disciplined, standing in these formations. That's those guys. Like they are the best and the finest that our Army has to offer. And it's super cool just seeing them train, working with them. There's a lot of work that gets put into that, right? And I respect them so much. And I feel super blessed to be able to work with them because, again, it's such an unorthodox
it is. Very
place to be. Yeah, for me, right, with my background. But I was there and just working with them again. It was a really cool opportunity.
I think what we'll do is, I've seen so many videos of with like their shades and they're guarding the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and they'll like someone will like cross the line and they'll be like, get back.
Oh, they're yelling. They yelled at me before, they don't.
Yeah, I mean, they take that stuff very seriously. It looks really hard. So, all right. So you're not, you're, as if that isn't enough, you're not just an active duty Army officer with this fascinating career who's in charge of AIT PA for the Army at DINFOS. You're also, obviously, you're a social media influencer. I know we don't like to use that term, but you're, it's really important, right? Because I think that when we start looking at young people, and obviously we talk about recruiting or even just reaching the American public, right? Social media is such a huge part of literally anything we do. And so, the first question is, I always like to ask this, but it's such an interesting combination. You've got got these, people who are in the military and they're robots, but then you also have social media, which is like opening up, yourself to the general public.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you've kind of brought those two things together?
Yeah. So social media was always something really fascinating to me, like back to like MySpace days. I was heavy into MySpace from the graphic standpoint, right? So I really love HTML coding and JavaScript. So I had a lot of fun creating my MySpace page. And then once they opened up Facebook to like the general public, I started to migrate there. And again, social media, it was so new then, when these platforms started to arise. And, you look at connectivity now, like how people connect through social media. It was so foreign then. Like people were more used to like being face to face or talking over the phone. They didn't really socialize a lot on social media. But then as these other platforms started to arise, people started to get more integrated into that space, right? So once Instagram came about, someone like me, I like taking pictures, and I'm like, oh man, this is great for me. And I started to get heavily immersed into that platform. And I will never forget, it was back in, I think, 2013. I took a picture from a party. It was like an all white party. And I wore this long white dress, and it was a side profile that my friend took. And I posted it on Instagram, like, look at me, all white party, And that following Monday, one of my coworkers happened to take a picture of me from the side as well. So I'm like, in uniform, hi, right? And I was looking at it, and I'm like, man, these two pictures are back to back. They're the same, but in one's in civilian and one's in uniform. And I was like, man, a uniform hides a lot. And so I created a collage. And when I did that, the photo blew up. And I'm like, ooh, okay. Right. And what was interesting was a lot of responses from people because, again, like you were saying, a lot of people already have their thoughts on what, soldiers or who soldiers are and where they're supposed to be or what they're like. And it was different. It was something different for people to see. And so I started using that. I started posting more photos like that. And I started to notice like, okay, I'm grabbing, a lot of attention in this way. And during that time, I was also noticing that social media can be a place to where negativity can run rampant.
Sure.
And I am someone that I'm really big on energy. And so I like to give out positive energy because I feel like it's reciprocated it's a greater chance of it being reciprocated. So I'm like, maybe I can, kind of shift the narrative, or maybe I need to put some more positivity out there because, again, we're not even thinking about it at that time, but like our mental health is being played on now, because if you have so much negativity that's being consumed, it starts to play on your psyche and your mood. And now, you're taking from this space and you're applying it to the physical space, right? So you're walking around with this energy that you receive from a totally different space. And so me realizing that, I'm like, okay, I have some attention here. Let me start using it for good. So I started putting out more positive quotes, and there were positive things that were happening in my life when it came to my career. So I'm like, let me just start putting these things out there. And the responses I was receiving was positive. So I'm like, okay, I like this. I like where this is going. And so now I'm seeing, okay, I have their attention when it comes to seeing someone in uniform, and it's unconventional, right? And and now they're listening, right? So I have their eyes and I have their ears, and I started to play off of that, which eventually started to grow into this brand that I have now. And it's mostly about telling my story, but using it to be inspirational and to motivate others in their own lives. One thing I just realized is kind of looking back on my life is that I have a lot of life experiences that relate to so many different people. And what I want to do is to show people like, hey, like I've been there, done that, and I'm still able to move forward. I think resiliency is really big, and we learn a lot of that. We experienced a lot of that being in the military, which I also think is another important point of, showing others like this is what I learned while being a soldier. This is a part of my identity. It's a part of who I am. It's a part of my training that I have received throughout my entire career that has helped me along, not just at work, but outside of work as well.
And isn't it funny that we share something in common. It also started with me with a side profile and a white dress. So
period.
No, but I get it. You're absolutely right. And the funny thing that when you're telling me this, I'm thinking, okay, you're a social media influencer and you're reaching, millions of people that don't know you personally, but you're also in charge of 200 soldiers right now, right? I'm sure they know the commanders on the Instagram, right? So what besides the people who don't know you, which is hugely positive, what do your soldiers think? Like, what do they think about that? Because it's obviously, one, it's pretty cool, but two, obviously it's a platform that they're looking, I'm sure, to leverage personally and professionally, but it's also a platform that they have to use, I'm sure, for their mission. So I'm curious, like, do they follow you? Do they comment? Do they say things to you?
Technically, they're not supposed to. They're not allowed to.
Is that right?
Because we're in a training environment.
Got it. Okay.
But they've told me that they've seen my profile prior to me coming into this position. And I remember thinking to myself, because I interviewed for this position back in November of 2022. And this was one of the things that I was thinking about, like, okay, if you get this job, people may already, be privy to who you are, what you've done. People will have a perception, whatever perception that they generate. So you have to remember that, right? Yeah. As I continue forward, that was always in the back of my mind. And so coming into this position, there were soldiers that came up to me and was like, "Ma'am, I heard you were with the president," or stuff like that. I think that's really cool.
Oh, that's great. So it's been positive. But there is this interesting thing, right? Like it's you wear both hats, right? It's that side by side picture. So obviously, everyone we talk to is either currently in the military or was in the military. But what advice do you have for people who sort of straddle that line, right? So they have their social media caricature or persona, but they also have a professional persona. And I think can both be used in a positive way to benefit each other? Has that been your experience?
Yeah. Absolutely, to a T. I think that it's very important that we preserve who we are, right? What I like about social media is that you create your own boundaries, right? So there's parts of my life that I choose to share, and there are other parts that I choose not to share. Of course. Right? A lot of times, because what's interesting is that with my platform and my following, a lot of people feel as though I share all of my life. So you have those, those individuals that'll be in the comments and they'll make their assumptions, based off of what they see. Yeah. And it's hilarious to me because I'm like, well, I mean, you think you know, but you don't know.
Do you ever get like the one is like, I can't believe you're doing that. The military doesn't know what you're doing. It's like, of course they do. Like, seriously.
Of course they do. Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
They see it. It's out there.
Yeah. No, right? Yeah, right. Do you, is there like a particularly memorable moment that you've had between like sort of military social media where maybe someone's recognized you or you've gotten to do something? You mentioned the president. Is there something that stands out to you?
I think what's cool it's the individuals that will send me an official email, right? Like over our military email network. And they'll say like, hey, ma'am, like I've seen you on social media. You inspire me. Can you be my mentor? And I think that's the most rewarding part, right? Because then that bridges the social media space and the workplace. Because they see based off of my personal side, right? Hey, like this is someone I want to emulate or I want to follow. And then they bring it to the professional side and they're like, hey, ma'am, and they go that route. I think that to me, it tells me that I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to do or what I intend to do. And it's, again, to inspire others to be the best version of themselves. And if they think that, I'm what they want to emulate. And I tell people all the time, like, don't tell me that you want to be like me. Like, I need you to be better, right? Because that's what it's all about. Like, we're here to inspire, mold, and create the next generation of leaders. And so we have to be the leader that we want them to see. We have to be the change, right? If there are things like, I remember when I was a private and junior enlisted, and certain things that I didn't agree with or I didn't like, or coming across leaders that I didn't want to emulate, and that helped to shape who I am.
Sure.
Like, I remember how I felt,
Yeah,
when people did that to me.
You're always looking for guidance, 19, 20 years old. Sure. And I mean,
exactly.
And that rule applies to everyone except for one group of people, the current AIT class that you're commanding. If you're watching this, I want you to turn it off and come back in 6 weeks when they're when do they graduate? then you can watch it. Until then, no, you cannot watch this.
They can watch it. They just can't interact. Well, they can interact with you. They can
interact with me. So send all the hate mail to me. I guess that's. No, it's really. I mean, it's an interesting thing. I mean, it's true. I would imagine that a lot of young people join the military now. They're probably going to come into contact with someone like you over social media. In many cases, before they even see like an Army or Air Force recruiting ad, or let alone a recruiter.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. I get so many questions. And that's another great thing about the military. It's the networking, right? So if I don't have the answer, I have so many recruiting friends and recruiting commander friends, right? Or friends that are recruiting commanders that I can easily just be like, hey, I'm going to link you with this person. And I know they're going to take care of you because I know this individual personally and professionally. So there's that piece, right? It's like a whole web just all coming together and creating this beautiful picture of what we need to happen when it comes from the recruiting aspect.
And the best part about that is a full-time job that you get paid a lot of bucks from the Army to do, right? No, you don't get paid. It's a total volunteer thing. You're just doing it out of the goodness of your heart. So any questions anyone has about recruiting, even if you're not interested in joining the Army, please get in touch with Angelena. She's happy to. No, but all seriously, you said you're right. Like, I think about my own career, right? Like, there are people along the way that were great mentors, and there were, like you said, they're just people that you meet. You're like, that's probably not something I want to copy. Or it's like, I'm pretty sure that is 100% not what I want to do. That's not the person that. Anyway, all right. So you ready for? We're gonna have a chance to spill a little more tea, but are you ready for the next section where we've chosen a bunch of clips from your social media? I have not seen them. You have not seen them.
Oh gosh.
I hope we have the right clips. I hope it's not from like someone totally different, but.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
how are those the same people? Okay. How old were you on the left? Were you 17, 18?
18.
Oh my God. You're a baby. You're literally a baby. And then on the right, this is you as a captain. So this is relatively recently.
Yeah, that was in March. So 33.
This is, so what do you think? When seeing these two pictures, what's the first reaction you have?
Oh, child. It's just, what's funny is that this is the first time I've actually seen them side by side. And it's just like, wow.
Isn't it funny? You're even wearing a uniform. They don't wear the ACUs anymore, right? I think that's
It's
like a totally different era, man.
It's everything. Wow. I'm so speechless. It's so weird. I'm reacting to myself.
Yeah. Okay. So what, you on the right, what would you say to your younger self on the left, knowing what you know today?
I would say don't give up, because everywhere that I went. So this was in basic training when I took this photo, like my first photo. I think this was within the first week of basic training, and through basic training, AIT, and every single duty station, there were levels of adversity that had me like questioning, like, why did I join the Army? Do I want to keep doing this? Or it was just there was always a time. But looking at that photo, I would never have imagined that I'm where I'm at today, like in a million years. I did not see that for myself. When I look at that photo, I just see someone that was just trying to get away from Lynchburg, Virginia, and just trying something new. Had no idea what I was getting myself into, had no vision for myself. I was just going with it, letting God lead and calling it a day. And again, me just looking at her, I would just tell her, just don't give up. Just keep going. You have no idea what's in store for you.
All right, you ready for the next one?
I am. Oh gosh.
All right, Chris, hit us.
Oh yeah.
Some major glow up here. Okay, tell us what we're looking at here.
Okay, so the top left-hand corner is myself and President Biden. What's so interesting about that that day? So that was General Ordino's funeral. So he was, Chief of Staff of the Army. And what was interesting is that with my current job as a ceremonies operations OIC, I didn't really work in mortuary affairs. Like one of my NCOs was the mortuary affairs NCO, and he would go down with the old guard at any funeral that we had. He was the one that was there on ground. And I remember during that time, obviously you see us with our mask on. So the pandemic we were pretty much in the middle of that. And we were teleworking, I think 3 days a week. And so that Friday before the funeral, my boss calls me. He's like, hey, so get your uniform ready. And I'm like, for what? He's like, Wednesday for the funeral, like the White House staff requested you to escort the president and first lady because they're going to attend now. And I'm like, okay.
Wow.
Yeah. And so went there and did that. And I was just promoted to captain. So I've already had a few missions with the president and first lady. So they knew who I was as a lieutenant. And we were leaving the funeral or the funeral at that point. And one of his staff members told him that I had just got promoted to captain. And so he's like, oh, really? And he asked me, or he was talking about his son, that served. And he was like, what his favorite rank in the military was? And I was like, what's that, sir? And he says, Master Sergeant. And I'm like, Master Sergeant? Like, I wasn't expecting that.
No.
Yeah, but that was us like leaving to go to the motorcade. But I thought it was such a cool interaction because it was just super like personable, down to earth, and that's what I love about this photo when I look at it. It's like you see, well, number one, it's amazing. And again, going back to like that little girl in basic training, like being a service member and just walking beside your commander in chief is like that, regardless of how you view things politically, that is the commander in chief, right? Like
the most powerful person in the world.
He's the highest ranking person in our military. And to be able to walk beside our commander in chief as a captain was a huge honor. Huge honor. And that's what I love the most about this photo. The next photo beside that is myself and Vice President Harris, which is also equally as amazing. So that was my last mission in my job there at Ceremonies Operations OIC before I PCS to a captain's career course. And that was the National Memorial Day observance of 2023. And again, with that job, like you have to be flexible and be able to work on the fly. I was not tasked to escort the vice president until that morning. And they're like, hey, so we're switching some things up. So we need you to escort her from point A to point B. And I'm like, okay. So she got there a little bit earlier, but again, she needed an escort. And normally for those missions, like I'm escorting the first lady and the second gentleman and all spouses that are going to actually be a part of the ceremony or stand in the ceremony. It just so happened that she needed an escort, and they're like, Captain Garland is the perfect person for the job. Awesome. She knew who I was too. I met her a couple times as well prior to that through other missions, but shaking hands with her and them capturing this image was like,
that's awesome.
Well, representation, hashtag representation.
Totally. And I mean, it's these are, Chris, can we go back to that just to get the palate cleansed? Can we go back to Angelena as an 18-year-old brand new enlisted? Come on. And then flip back to where she is with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and all these senior leaders. I mean, come on, that's pretty cool.
Like that. The top right photo was Inauguration Day. So that was my first mission.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, so in this photo, you see me walking behind President Biden and First Lady Biden, and the lady to my right in the picture is Mrs. Jones. She was the Military District of Washington Commanding General's wife.
Oh, wow.
And what we were talking about is so funny. That day, there was a last minute change. My boss came over the radio, was like, hey, we're going to switch up how you're going to march the men onto the plaza, and you need to let Ms. Jones know that. And so, mind you, when he tells me this, the motorcade is pulling up. And I'm like, oh, how am I going to do this? So we're literally right there, we're having that conversation like, hey, ma'am, instead of us going in this formation, I'm going to line you up this way, and we only had like 20 to 25 seconds to have that conversation.
Right.
And right after that, like we're at the briefing tent, I have to immediately pull the spouses so we can get onto the plaza. And once we get onto the plaza, it was game time. Like there's this, so we go up this hill and there's like a little like part on the hill where you're like the cameras are on you. And I will never forget because I forgot to take off my Apple Watch on that day. And as soon as I hit that point, my phone's going off like, bzz, bzz, bzz. It's like all these people like, I see you. So I'm like, don't react. So that was funny. The bottom left-hand corner was also a cool ceremony. So that is the president of Ukraine. That was the wreath-laying ceremony we had for him when he came to visit on the mall entrance for the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which again, super crazy opportunity just to be there. And this is, actually prior to what's going on now. And now looking back at that photo, it's like, wow,
that's really cool.
Yeah.
That girl from Lynchburg, Virginia. It's all I keep thinking.
I know, it's crazy. Yeah. And then that bottom middle photo, so that's Inauguration Day. Those are the joint escorts that are beside me. And I love that we took this photo because again, it shows it epitomizes representation. Yeah. And I was the lead escort, and I was the one that had to show them what they needed to do. Like I was in charge of them. And again, it was super humbling because that was my first mission. All of these guys that are standing beside me were already working in ceremonies, but they were taking my lead. And for me, like looking at this photo again, even from then until now, it's so empowering to me because it shows me like no matter what position you're in, you just have to make it your own, take charge, and you will be successful in it. And that was like that day again, like just going back to that photo, the top right hand photo, like there were so many adjustments that day. And even leading up to, for preparations for the inauguration, I used to tell everybody, even the escorts, like flexibility is key because there's a lot of change happening. But being in that position to be able to adapt, to be flexible, to lead, in a space that I was very unfamiliar with, it showed me that I am just as capable as these people that are standing to the left and right of me. I'm not less than. Just because I have a lack of experience doesn't mean that I don't have the ability to step up to the plate and make things happen. And so I get a lot of that from looking at that photo. And then the bottom right photo is myself and General McConville, who just retired last year. He was the most recent Chief of Staff of the Army. And that was a cool day too, because my boss, during that time, he was recovering from surgery. And so I had to cover down on his duties, which meant that I had to be the one to brief the ceremonies to the actual host and dignitaries. And that day was the arrival ceremony for the French.
Wow.
Yeah. Chief of Staff of the Army for France. And so I was the one back at the Chief of Staff of the Army's house, like briefing the ceremony to them. And I had to escort them down to where the ceremony was taking place and lead them through all the motions. And again, like being a captain, like that's the highest ranking officer in our army. Like he's it, right? And to be in that position and to brief him on these ceremonies and to execute in that way, just another great opportunity. Crazy opportunity.
Just all of, I mean, it's remarkable. All right, you
Yeah.
ready? Let's keep it rolling. I'm excited to see what comes next.
At the end of the day, I tell you, especially the young ones that are listening in this room, sometimes you have to let people see you walk away. You know, sometimes you have to allow people or accept the fact that some people just won't understand the value that you bring to the team, and it's okay that they don't understand it. It is absolutely okay that they don't understand it, because as long as you know your value, you won't stay in a place where people don't value you. Period.
Look at you. I mean, come on. This is, I mean, I'm sorry. Every time I see this, that flashback of that you as an 18-year-old, and I say this with completely as a positive and utmost respect. What an amazing, trajectory of a career you have. I mean, you're I mean, here you are as a thought leader, right? Could you as an 18-year-old brand new private, could you have imagined yourself speaking like this at function?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And what's funny is that I had trouble growing up with speech. I had to do speech therapy. And I will say that it's not so much that I was ever scared to talk in front of people, but because of, certain environments that I was in, there were a lot of times I was afraid to speak up when I needed to. And with my journey in the military, it gave me confidence in being able to do that in so many different ways. And now with me, being a motivational speaker and going on speaking engagement, it excites me to do things like this, because again, all it is just me telling my story and using it in a positive way and trying to give back to my community. It's just, yeah.
You don't have to say anything more. It's an amazing, like I said, it is such a remarkable trajectory. I mean, it really is a pretty wild thing. You're great, by the way.
And there was something that happened to you. What was that?
I was a victim of a drive-by shooting. Before I could even register what was happening with my foot, I see blood coming out of my leg.
Like, how did that make you feel in terms of being moving forward in the military?
I don't look at it like a woe is me type thing. I came out of it victorious, so I'm not going to walk around with a victim mentality when that wasn't my situation. You can't make people believe in you if you don't believe in yourself.
So, I mean, obviously you've had a remarkable career. I mean, when you told me about this, you've also faced your own levels of adversity, right? You're the victim of gun violence. I think about this, Angelena. It's almost like adversity can be something very extreme, like gun violence, but adversity can also be something like being an 18-year-old kid from Lynchburg, Virginia, who's trying to find a way to get out. Yeah. Is there something when you look at this and you think about, again, I always struck back to that picture of 18. I'm sorry. I know I keep bringing this up. But is there something you can say to people about, and this is a great thing for social media, like, you don't have to have a one-to-one ratio about like adversity that you're facing versus what someone else. It's still adversity, right? There are things that come easy to me and there are things that come very difficult to me. And I'm sure for a lot of people, it'd be like, I've been on TV, you talk about just public speaking. I've been on TV a lot of times. Yeah. It doesn't, like, I've done public speaking with like huge, I did like a rally once. It was like 60,000 people. I was like, oh, all right. And it's just, that stuff doesn't bother me. Now, clowns on the other hand, I'm kidding. No, but like there's little things like that, it's like a challenge. Like it comes harder. And I feel like maybe this is my impression of this, but that's kind of your message, right? Like everyone has challenges and just sort of sometimes you have to meet them or they're going to steamroll you, right? You have to make a decision.
In life, we are all going to go through things, right? that's the interesting thing about social media too, because it is a highlight reel. And a lot of people don't show, and there's nothing wrong with it. Well, I'll say this, we show what we want to show, right?
Sure.
And a lot of us choose not to show like a lot of the raw, real, gritty parts of our life, right? And I like, showing this part because this is something that happened to me, but it's not something that I let define me. It's something that I was able to use to help myself and to help others. I remember we had a gun rally a couple of days after the shooting, and I was able to make it to that. And one of the things I told him, I was like, look, I'm supposed to graduate college next year. This is not going to stop me from graduating. This is not going to stop me from commissioning as an officer. I will graduate with a 3.8, and it's just so happened because at that time I had a 3.8 and I ended up graduating with a 3.9. It ended up fueling me even more. And a lot of it, again, has to do with how I viewed that situation. And that's just the thing about life. We can always, we have the opportunity or the option to look at things in a negative way, or we can look at it in a positive way. And not every negative situation needs to or warrants a negative reaction. And something as egregious as a drive-by shooting, right? Like that is something that is not something that anybody expects. However, if it happens, a lot of people expected me to, just kind of stay put or, have a negative attitude about it, but I just refused because I just felt so grateful to even be alive and to live to see another day. And so I didn't have, and then I had goals, for myself. So for me, I just looked at it like, I don't have time to, kind of sulk in this situation. Like I'm going to use my time to rest, to recover, and to keep going.
Yeah.
Just like I would tell, again, like that little girl, like just keep going. Because it's not, you won't stop here. You won't stop here.
It's solid advice. All right. Last one. It feels like everyone's going to be hard to top the last one. Is this?
Nice.
Go ahead. Tell us. What are you thinking here?
So that is my second prom dress giveaway. So I started it last year because I had some gowns in my closet that I had worn once and I didn't know what to do with them. And I thought to myself, well, prom's around the corner. Maybe you should just give them away. And the message behind that, or the reasoning behind that too, was when I was in high school. I didn't attend my high school prom either junior year or senior year because my mom couldn't afford to send me to prom. It was what it was. I also didn't feel comfortable going to my prom just based off of the atmosphere that I was in high school and some of the adversities that I faced there with my peers and the environment. And so I didn't have that opportunity. And I wanted to give younger women who may be in the same position that I was in the opportunity to do so. And so I was like, okay. And it also was another opportunity for me to create some content, right? And kind of brush up on that too. So it was just like all encompassing. Yeah, it's a win-win, right? So I created the video last year, and the giveaway was just two girls were going to have the opportunity to choose one out of the 4 dresses, and all they had to do was just comment their name and then share it to their story, or if somebody wanted to nominate someone, same thing. And I chose 2 females, and they also got $100 gift card to nice. Kind of help out with their look, and sent those off, and it was a success. And I was like, man, like I want to do this again next year because it's
so sweet.
The best part was the parents, because when I chose the winners, I sent them a direct message, and I was like, I just need your name and I need your parents' information. So, because I'm an adult and I need to talk to another adult, right? And just inform them of what's going on. And so I can get, their address and stuff like that. And it was really the parents that were like so appreciative. Like,
oh, that's really nice.
That really truly blessed me. And so this year I'm like, I'm doing it again. And so that was that. But what was even better was I had an even greater following. And what came from that were people wanting to donate to the $100 gift card. So instead of getting $100, they were able to receive each $425 gift
That's
card.
amazing.
So the two girls were already chosen. One of them already had their prom, and she posted her prom pictures and actually put in a caption like, "Thank you so much. I am Angelena for this dress," and stuff like that. And
that's really nice.
It's so fulfilling. And again, it's with purpose. Like, I'm really big on doing things with intentionality and purpose. And that's what I love about, watching that video back. And then again, the content creating is always fun to me.
Of course. Of course. I mean, I listen, Crystal, I think we should do the same thing. We could do like a starter dad pack giveaway, give them like New Balance sneakers and black socks and some jorts. What do you think? Yeah. Okay. The dad hat, right? With like SPF 90 and some Honda Pilot minivan keys. I don't know.
Yep.
That's awesome. First of all, so what an amazing career, a transformative career. What a nice way to sort of set the stage for your peers to say like, hey, the Army is an institution, the military is an institution. When I left, when you eventually leave, it'll continue on. There's always a next generation that's coming up, right? Mm-hmm. So, you have a duty. It's really good to see people that see that they have a duty to train that next generation. That part of your job when you belong to an institution like that is to make sure that those that come after you have the tools that, maybe you didn't have. I think there's a lot of people out there that leaders are like, I did it this way, so you're going to do it that way. And it was hard for me, so it's going to be hard for you. And that's bullshit.
It doesn't have to be that way.
No,
yeah. And that's another thing I try to stress too with my social media. Like, we are all individuals, right? We all have a gift inside of us that has that value that we can give to every single organization that we're a part of, right? And when I interviewed for this job, I didn't know that it was an AIT company command position. And when my boss who interviewed me told me that it was an AIT position, I was like, oh, that's perfect, because I get them right before they go out into the operational Army. So I'm that last piece of influence that they have. Mm-hmm. And I want to carry that burden, because I want them to see like, hey, you understanding that this is an institution and we do, abide by certain guidelines and regulations, but you can still be you, and you have to be you, because the Army needs what you have inside of you in order to make it better. It doesn't have to look like what's to the left and right of you. It's who you are and what you contribute to our force. And that's what we need.
What a great way to end this. Angelena, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. For those of you, make sure you check her out. We're going to post links in the description on IG, TikTok, and thanks for coming on. Hope you'll come back.
Thank you so much for having me.